Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Keely Ogden, I'm a writer, and I am the Vampire Girl. Today, we are looking at my top 5 favorite vampire movies. Now, as a vampire nut, I'm often asked what movie is my favorite, and I've never really been sure how to answer it. Do I point the person towards classics? Do I point them towards some of the more gore-heavy genre fare? Up until now, my answers have been relative to the person that I'm talking to. Today, however, we are looking at my definitive 5 picks. Best vampire movies that I have seen up to this point. To be fair, I'm sure I'll find movies down the line that will move in and out of the list. But as of today, when I am posting this video, the end of March of 2021, these are my top 5 favorite vampire movies. It was super hard trying to narrow down 5 movies because I really like them all. There have been very few movies, especially vampire movies, that I don't like at least a little bit. I had to narrow down the categories. The first factor is how well they handle vampire lore and the creature design. The second category is how the story of the movie itself is structured. And the third and most important category, how much I like the movie. For each of my top picks, I'll give you a brief spoiler-free summary of the movie as well as a smattering of my thoughts. And then I will give any content warnings, the MPAA rating of the movie, and finally my rating out of 5. Just so you know how hard this list was for me to make, I literally changed it again the day before filming this video. So, without further ado, this currently is my top 5 favorite vampire movies that you definitely need to check out. Number 5, Fright Night. My number 5 pick is the 2011 remake of Fright Night. Now, this may come as a shock to anybody that I've talked about this movie to. I mean, it used to be in my top 3. Since then, I've seen quite a few more vampire movies, and Fright Night has been bumped back in the list. In fact, this movie was bumped back to number 5 just before I filmed this video. Don't get me wrong, I adore this movie. It just has one glaring flaw that we'll get to in a little bit. Directed by Craig Gillespie, this movie stars Anton Yelchin, Colin Farrell, David Tennant, Imogen Poots, Toni Collette, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse. This movie, of course, is a remake of the 1980s classic starring Christopher Sarandon, which, if you haven't checked out that movie, I highly recommend it. I just like this one a little more. We follow Charlie Brewster, a high school student who has it all. He has a beautiful girlfriend, a really awesome mom, and he's doing really well in school. His popularity, however, has come at the cost of his old friends, his more geeky, nerdy friends. This includes his former best friend, Ed. When people start going missing around their Vegas suburb, Charlie starts to wonder if Ed might have been onto something. Maybe he was right about his new neighbor being a vampire. Charlie decides to reach out to Vegas magician and vampire expert Peter Vincent, played by the incredible David Tennant. He's fantastic in this. With his help, Charlie hopes to get to the bottom of the disappearances before he or his mom are targeted next. This movie is so much fun. I absolutely love the cast. The action is incredible. There are car chases, there are explosions, there are incredible fight sequences. It's amazing. Like I said, the cast is stacked. Anton Yelchin is incredible as Charlie. We really want to follow him and see what he's going to do next. David Tennant as Peter Vincent, he steals the show, not gonna lie, he is the best part of the movie. He's fantastic. Colin Farrell has replaced Christopher Sarandon in this movie as Jerry the Vampire. Farrell is a very nice update to this more modern feeling movie. He's incredibly charming and incredibly petty, which I love. I love petty bad guys. I love when they're so petty. It makes me happy. The only real downside to this movie, the reason that this movie is number 5 on my list, is Christopher Mintz-Plasse as Ed. He's so annoying. Now, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, he's a good actor. He has a type, I feel. I feel like he has a type. Ed, in the original, was Charlie's best friend, and he really felt like Charlie's best friend. In this movie, Ed is a whiny, bitchy little incel whose only desire is to rag on Charlie's girlfriend, Amy. It's whore this and slut that, and you must be a whore yourself, Brewster. It's so annoying, and it's not necessary, and it needs to be out of the movie. Go away. Give me the explosions and the Christopher Sarandon cameo and shut up. So for the reason of Ed's character, don't let my hatred of him deter you from watching the movie though, because he's not in a whole lot of it. Get past the first part and we're fine. We're fine after the first like 10-15 minutes. We're good. I almost forgot to talk about the best character. Ginger. Ginger is the best character. I can't tell you anymore, but Ginger's existence and her entire being almost makes up for Ed. He's still the worst, but Ginger is the best. So watch this movie for the sake of Ginger, because she's incredible and she deserved better. Fright Night is rated R. There's some language, some implied sauciness, and blood aplenty. This movie gets an incredible rating of 4 out of 5. Like I said, Ed is literally the only negative thing that I have to say about this movie. And once he's gone, it just flies. It's so much fun. Please go check out Fright Night. Number 4. Dracula Untold. No, not another Dracula movie. Breathe. Breathe. Good. Dracula Untold has very, very little to do with Stoker's novel, so just wipe that whole book out of your mind for a minute. I know the last 3 months have only been about Dracula. This is the last time we're talking about him for a little while. Directed by Gary Shore, this movie stars Luke Evans as Dracula, his wife is played by Sarah Gadon, and Dominic Cooper sweeps in, playing the incredible villain Mehmed. There's also a pair of Game of Thrones alumni in the cast, Charles Dance and Art Parkinson. This movie follows Vlad Dracula, Prince of Wallachia, once the most feared warrior in the entire land, who had once been recruited by the Turkish army. Now, he has put his armor aside and is trying to be a good family man and a good ruler to his people. When the Turks come to collect another 1,000 young men for their army, Vlad is faced with a choice. See his son go into the same brutal servitude that he did, or find a way to fight back. Vlad will go to incredibly dark places in order to protect his family. After all, men don't fear swords, they fear monsters. I would best describe this movie as paranormal fantasy. It has all of the good war, fantastical being elements of a good fantasy movie, while still being full of enough cool vampire gore and action to satisfy any horror viewer. The cinematography of this movie is also so beautiful, it's so pretty to look at. I love this movie's cinematography and the way that it photographs the vampire powers. When you watch this movie, you'll know what I mean. Is so clear. We never miss anything. The best part of this movie are the characters, and this is what actually pushed it out of the number 5 spot and made it swap places with Fright Night. The characters in this movie are fantastic. Luke Evans as Dracula is so good. He has this incredible strength and power, and we can see that he has been through a lot, but he also has this wonderfully soft, caring side. He knows what he has done in his past and the struggle and hardship and the trauma that he has had to go through, and he'll be damned if he lets his son Ingress go through the same thing. He is so good, and we know, on account of it being a Dracula movie, we know what he is going to sacrifice in order to protect the people that he loves. He's so good. I love him so much. Dominic Cooper's Mehmed is also an incredible villain. Not only is he cruel and menacing, he's incredibly clever. He also has this great dynamic with Luke Evans' character. Mehmed and Dracula share a history, and it comes through incredibly well in the actors' performances. I do have to give a small shout out to Art Parkinson's Ingress. He is Dracula's son, and he's a tough little kid. Like, bravo. Dracula Untold is rated PG-13. There is some fantasy violence, a la Lord of the Rings, big armies, clashy, everybody dies, and some great vampire violence, blood aplenty, it's everywhere, but it's still really good, so go watch the movie. From me, this movie gets a score of 5 out of 5. It's beautiful to look at, the characters are fantastic, the story is very well structured and paced. I highly recommend this movie. Go check out Dracula Untold. You can find it in most $5 bins, so definitely check it out. It does come with a couple of other mediocre movies, which is why I have those two blocked out. But that's another matter for another day. Go watch Dracula Untold. Number 3. Daybreakers. Daybreakers is a recent addition to my list, and oh my gosh, is it a good one. It delves into the more scientific side of vampires, and it shows us what happens when the world is run by blood-sucking monsters. It's a little close to home, but we'll go with it anyway. Directed by Michael and Peter Spierig, this movie stars Ethan Hawke, Sam Neill, my baby Willem Dafoe, Claudia Carvin, and Michael Dorman, as well as a whole host of other incredible actors. This movie takes place 10 years after a viral infection turns the world's population into vampires. Ethan Hawke plays Edward Dalton, the head hematologist for Bromley Marks. Bromley Marks is in charge of providing blood supply to the vampire residents. This, of course, comes at the cost of the remaining human population. Dalton is trying to come up with a blood substitute so that they can stop feeding on humans for good. This is incredibly important, as most of the human population has either died out or is in hiding. At this point, vampires have 3 choices: find a substitute, hunt the rest of the humans to extinction, or devolve into terrifying subsiders. That is, until a vampire named Elvis approaches Dalton with a new solution. This movie is so slick. It looks fantastic. The cinematography, the lighting of this movie, girl, it's a pretty movie. It is also backed by an incredibly clever plot and amazing characters. This movie seamlessly blends the gothic style of vampire films with a more sci-fi look and feel. I will say, this movie is brutal. It holds nothing back. It shows the horrors of overconsumption, the terrible lengths people will go to save themselves and the people they love, and the terrifying consequences of selfish actions. Again, the cast is stellar. Ethan Hawke is so good in this movie. He's so good. Dalton is a very conflicted character. He's a vampire who doesn't want to be one, but has to be, doesn't really have another choice. So he's trying to make the best of the world for both the vampire population and the human population. He's trying to find a balance, and that comes through really well in Ethan Hawke's portrayal of him. Sam Neill plays Mr. Bromley, the head of Bromley Marks. He is so good. Bromley is very much a villain who feels like he is right. He feels like he's genuinely doing the right thing, which makes him both terrifying and tragic. And don't get me started on Elvis. Willem Dafoe in this movie is so much fun. He's a vampire named Elvis with a goatee and a crossbow. He's the best part of the movie. He's fantastic. I love him forever. Mr. Dafoe, sir, I love you. Daybreakers is rated R for a very good reason. There is so much blood. This is probably the bloodiest film in the entire lineup. So, rated R for a good reason. Lots of vampire gore. Subsiders are freaky as hell. So good though. Watch the movie. This movie also gets a rating of 5 out of 5. It's so good, and it's so different from everything else that I've seen up to this point. Number 2. Let Me In. Speaking of brutal, let's look at my number 2 pick. Let Me In, a remake of the Swedish original Let the Right One In. Now, Let Me In isn't brutal in the same way that Daybreakers is. It's emotionally brutal. It will take your heart, squeeze all of the juice out of it, hang it up on the clothesline, let it dry, cook it, and then feed it to you with like ghost peppers and other painful things. And it's just so painful, but it's so good. Let me explain. Let Me In was released in 2010 and was directed by Matt Reeves. It stars Chloe Grace Moretz, Cody Smith-McPhee, Richard Jenkins, and also features Dylan Minnette and Elias Koteas. Sorry if I said that wrong. We follow Owen, a 12-year-old boy who is going through a really rough time. His parents are in the middle of a messy divorce, and he is violently and horrifically bullied at school. He gets a new neighbor one day, a young girl named Abby. Owen is so excited to finally have somebody that he may be able to be friends with. Sadly, Abby says they can never be friends. This, of course, as you probably guessed, is because Abby's a vampire. Despite Abby's reluctance and Owen's awkwardness, the kids form an incredible, powerful bond. However, this isn't a feel-good movie about friendship. This is a movie about sacrifice and about loneliness. We see how much these kids mean to each other, and we want them to be together. However, we see just how dangerous Abby can be. Richard Jenkins, who plays her guardian, makes sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice on her behalf. Through all of the pain and struggle, these kids give each other strength. I love this movie. It's so beautiful and tragic. It's such a fantastic movie that shows you the downside and the eternal loneliness that comes with being a vampire. It portrays it in such a raw way. It's so good. This movie really tugs at my heartstrings. I want these two kids to be happy. And Richard Jenkins. I want him to be happy too, damn it. He's so cute. I love Richard Jenkins. He doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve this movie. This movie is hard, but it's so good. Go watch it. Be ready to feel things. This movie also stars Chloe Grace Moretz as Abby. Now, in my opinion, Chloe Grace Moretz is one of the best actresses of my generation, and she's often overlooked, which should not be the case. So go check out her movies. She's fantastic. I love Chloe Grace Moretz. She deserves so much more recognition. Let Me In is rated R for a very good reason. There is some frightening imagery, some violent bullying, and some bloody murder. All the good stuff. That said, and for all of my emotional caveats, this movie still gets a score of 5 out of 5. It's fantastic. Please do check it out. It's... Go check it out. I can't say anymore. Go watch the movie. And number 1, What We Do in the Shadows. I feel like if you ask a lot of fans, What We Do in the Shadows would be at least in their top 5, if not their favorite vampire movie. It's just that good. What We Do in the Shadows is a 2014 mockumentary movie filmed in New Zealand and directed by Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement. This movie stars Waititi and Clement, as well as Jonathan Brugg, Corey Gonzalez-Marcer, Stuart Rutherford, and Ben Francham. I'm sorry if I pronounced your names wrong. I am American, I don't know words. This film, once again, is a mockumentary. It's about a film crew that follows around these 4 flatmates in New Zealand. The only catch is, these flatmates are vampires. Soon, a 5th roommate is added to their very chaotic ranks, and of course, hilarity ensues. What I was not expecting was for this movie, this dark comedy, to make me feel things in my heart. How dare you, movie? You're supposed to give me the giggles, not the feelings. Stop it. That's all I can give you for the summary, so let's just move into my thoughts because I have a lot of them. This movie is insanely funny. Now, I'm not usually a comedy fan because they'll push too far, they'll make jokes that don't always land, they will try to push the envelope but end up going overboard into unfunny, cringy territory. So I'm very cautious with comedy movies. This movie is so well paced. It's well acted, it's well written, the jokes are clever, and they never try to push too far. Don't get me wrong, they still push, but they never go overboard. There is a sense of restraint with this movie, which is amazing. The writing is clever, the performances are incredibly well balanced, and there's just a lot of love poured into this film. This movie is also a love letter to every era of vampire cinema we've had up to this point. We have the frightening monster, the warrior king, the aristocratic dandy, the rock star, and the annoying modern one. And Stu. Can't forget Stu. Stu's a great guy. Anything else that I say about this movie will not be able to do it justice. This is one you just have to see for yourself. What We Do in the Shadows is rated R. There is some casual swearing, some implied sauciness, a few sex jokes in there, and comedic amounts of blood. I highly recommend this movie. This movie gets a score of 6 out of 10. I'm breaking the scale. I don't care. This movie deserves it. It's fantastic. Seriously, go check this one out. It's so much fun. Check it out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I am glad that I finally got to talk about my top 5 favorite vampire movies. I will be doing more in-depth reviews and analysis of these movies in the future, but for now, I just really want you guys to go check them out. If you've seen any of these movies, please let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know what your favorite vampire movie is, or your favorite movie in general, because maybe we'll have that in common too. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go binge watch all these movies again. Until next time, bye guys!